All right, Thad, the schedule comes out. There are 17 games on it and 3 preseason games. That was pretty much what we knew going in, right? I mean, we had a pretty solid idea of that. But look, it started leaking out that the Rams were going to open things up, and that looked like a pretty strong bet. That's exactly what happened. What are your thoughts on that first game, first off?
It's quite an honor for the Bills, to be in that spot. I mean, that's the NFL showcase game. It's the first game of the year. It's we want to get fired up for the season game, and to pick the Bills out of what I think it was a total of 9 different opponents. Obviously, there are 3 or 4 in there that had no chance, but I think it's a little feather in Buffalo's cap. And I think this whole schedule, becomes that. This is the schedule that a superstar team would get. I mean, max number of primetime games. You get the opener. You get Thanksgiving too. So just being in that game, I think is the microcosm view of a schedule that really says, Buffalo has arrived as maybe not but the or one of the premier teams.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago where leading into schedule release was most of these are going to be 1:00 on Sunday. Right now, they literally kick off the season with 2 primetime games. I mean, that's like you said, it's a feather and a cap to them. Thad, I looked at this schedule from every angle. I feel like it's really friendly to the Bills. I mean, they go on the road back to back a couple of times, but one of the, we already mentioned the Rams game, but it's kind of nice to have that West Coast road trip out of the way immediately. There's no quick turnaround. There's no, well, they're on the West Coast now and they play on a Thursday. I feel like this schedule's pretty friendly.
Yeah. After the bye week, week 7, the Bills' longest trip is Chicago. So I mean that sums it up. And then trip wise, obviously Chicago is a place everybody flies to, so it's easy. Not that the Bills aren't worried about that. The point is that there's not a hard turnaround. There's not a maybe going to Detroit on the short week for Thanksgiving might be something you look at as a little bit of a pain, but for the most part, I agree that this is a relatively friendly schedule. The one thing I will say, I think from the negative side is that there are a decent amount of tougher games early, Rams, Titans, kind of Ravens.
It gets softer
Chiefs,
later,
Packers.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It gets softer later.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I looked at the front end a little heavier, but man, I tell you what, after that Green Bay game, you got the Jets in there twice. You got Detroit. Who knows what Cleveland looks like, depending on Deshaun Watson. Chicago. I'll tell you the game, though, at the end of the season, that Bengals night game, baby. How much fun is that going to be? Those offenses, I mean, wow, they made the first one to 50.
And I mean, it's not out of the realm that that a bye might be on the line for that game. I mean, that's very possible. So the other thing I looked at too, it's not a super friendly schedule for the fans. One afternoon home game before November 13th. I mean, this is going to be another, anybody who buys season tickets before the rest of the season, they should get free hand warmers with it. It's going to be that kind of schedule, for them. But I mean, I think the best part of it is the way that this team has kind of arrived, like we talked about. It's going to be something that, fans can feel good about. And there's really not a week. I guess I have to go through it to see, each kind of rest situation. But the only short week the Bills have all year is the Lions. And, frankly, the Bills can't beat the Lions on 4 hours rest, let alone 4 days. We've got a whole different discussion going on. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think overall pretty friendly. The 2 things I was thinking about with this team this year, what would kind of determine, where you'd want games to fall? We got a new offensive coordinator and you got Trey White, uncertain status early in the year, So I think, you think first with Trey White, I was thinking, all right, well, where are the good receivers? Well, you got, Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill, 2 of the first 3. Bill's got a break that A.J. Brown isn't on Tennessee anymore. But
Baltimore, I think you and I are playing receiver for Baltimore.
Yeah, exactly. But Pittsburgh's group is generally good. Chiefs don't have great receivers, but they still have Pat Mahomes. And then Packers is week 8 after the bye. Maybe Trey's good by then. So, they do have heavier passing offenses early. Now, to be fair, you do get Tyreek Hill again in December. You get the Bengals in December. So the Bills will need Trey White for those games, but, probably more dangerous passing games / receivers early. And then, going back to the better teams early, if you got a young offensive coordinator in Dorsey that's trying to figure things out, you might have wanted your schedule to be a little more backloaded, but again, if the Bills get off to a great start, and then this is still a team doesn't have the same amount of continuity they've had previous years, but they still have a lot compared to most other teams. You get off to that hot start, boy, if they're like 6-1, 7-1, looking at Jets, Vikings, Browns, Lions, Jets again, it's going to feel really good about where the Bills are going to end up with this regular season.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. We've been talking here for 5 minutes, and we're just now getting to the last game of the season being the Patriots. I mean, 2 years ago, that would have been the first game we would have talked about, right? It would have been, hey, there's a chance that the division's on the line, right? That last game of the year, the NFL schedule makers made it so those two teams play, but I don't know. And maybe part of the reason I'm looking at this schedule as being friendly is, quite frankly, the Bills are better than, or at least as good as every single team on the schedule, right?
Oh, they're the Super Bowl favorites.
Yeah.
This is how it's supposed to look. I mean, there's only about 4 or 5 or 6 teams in the whole league that we would think in general would hang with them on a regular basis, and you're not going to play all of them, and there's a few, I think, on the schedule, if you want to go through games that are losable, and obviously they lost to Jacksonville, so they can lose any of these, but I mean, teams that we think can hang with Buffalo, it's just the Rams, Chiefs, Packers, and that's it, right? Bengals. Those would be the only 4 that we'd look at. All right, that's a tough game. That's going to be a big game. The rest of these are going to be, should win games for the Bills. And we're talking about 13 games. I mean, they're going to lose 1 or 2.
Sure.
But I mean, what if they go less than 11-2 against the rest of the schedule, we're probably disappointed, right?
Yeah, I 1,000% agree. And I kind of looked at that because you look at those 4 teams that you mentioned as kind of like the upper tier with the Bills, teams that are up in just a little different stratosphere. If they split those, say they go 2-2 in those, and then they lose 2 other ones, and in the rest of the grouping, 4-loss season, you're sitting at 13-4 when it's all said and done. You've done pretty well for yourself. And I mean, you're probably, if you're not staring at a bye week, it's probably awful doggone close. One of the other games I want to mention is really kind of looking forward to seeing Aaron Rodgers here. He's one of those guys still, this group of young, really good quarterbacks. Of course, they're so much fun to watch. But there is still something to seeing the Bradys and the Aaron Rodgers on the schedule going, you don't know, he's going to the Hall of Fame, and you don't know how many more seasons he's got in him. So that, to me, that's going to be a fun home game, and it's in prime time.
Oh, that's probably, to me, in terms of like what we do, kind of, seeing the great players come into town, I think that's the best game on the schedule, or at least the most fun game. I mean, Bills Chiefs is always great, but frankly, we've done that, 17 times the last 2 years. It's kind of, old hat. And you know what? I would have been more excited for Bills Rams later in the year.
Me too.
That week 1 game, there's so much pomp and circumstance with it. I don't know where the Rams are going to be at head-wise. They're going to, they're going to unveil the banner. I mean, not that they won't be ready to play or to make any excuses. It's just, I think, like, you put that game week 7, and now I'm, rubbing the hands, getting excited for it. And the rest of the schedule, the other NFC North teams, Chicago, Detroit, Minnesota, there's some intrigue there. Deshaun Watson playing for the Browns would make that game in November fun, Yeah. But I think I agree that Packers game is the biggest one. The one thing I want to point out, Josh, if I can we take a minute to complain about the schedule from a media point of view?
Absolutely, 100%.
Awful for us.
I am fully expecting, a little conversation about this, because look, from our point of view, and quite frankly, if you're a Bills fan and you want to travel, you want to be in Western New York early in the season. You don't want to be in Miami. You want that later in the year. LA, you want that at least mid-season. You want that in November. You're right. We are going to need high SPF early in the season.
Oh man, it's going to be scorching for the first 3 weeks, and then it's going to be, 18 layers again, like we did last year, that darn Patriots Monday night game. But on top of that, too, on the road for Thanksgiving again this year, on the road for Christmas Eve, and because they play that Thursday game, camp starts on a Saturday instead of a Tuesday.
Yep.
You and I, my friend, just lost another week in the summer, So for us in the media, on top of the weather thing, just, just like last year, another pit schedule, for us. Obviously, we love covering the team and all that stuff, but if we could pick, we would have not picked any of this.
If there's one game on the schedule that outside of those four, when we talk about, the Rams, the Chiefs, the Packers, and the Bengals, there's one other game on there that you look at and go, that one's a little, I don't know about that one. To me, it's Baltimore. I feel like they're always coached up. Baltimore's a tough place to win. They have a great crowd. They have a great atmosphere. Is there one on there that kind of jumps out to you that you go, that could be a sneaky, tough game?
That Baltimore game, I almost wonder if we're remiss in not putting them up in that echelon with the other four. Maybe not quite there, but on their own level in between the top four in the next group.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. That's a tough game. The one, if I got to look through here and pick one, that game in Foxborough Thursday night, coming off Thanksgiving, let's assume the Patriots have some sort of decent season, right? Where they're respectable, something to play for. You got to imagine the way the Bills just absolutely throttled New England the last two games last year, that Belichick and company and the fans in Gillette are going to be fired up for bear in that game. Now, look, Buffalo might take them apart again, distinctly possible. But, there's no way that those two games at the end of last year are not sticking in the craw in Foxborough all season long. So, I mean, we're talking about relative to these other, the Jets and, Lions and Bears games. I think that game, in prime time, that could be a road bump that's tougher than maybe Bills fans might think.
All right. Lastly, the over-under for total wins on the Bills before the release of the schedule, was it 11.5? Is that the number that I saw?
Yep, that's correct.
Is there any way you see this team not going over?
All right. Well, I mean,
obviously, last year, barring injuries.
Yeah, right. Take that out of it. Before I answer that, the one thing I will say is last year the Bills number was 11, and I read beginning of the year the Bills had like 90% of the money was on the over last year, and it pushed. So fair warning to anybody who thinks their money is locked in. But I mean, I guess if you want to, let's try and find 6 losses. The top 4 games, 3 of those games are on the road. So you lose Rams, you lose Chiefs, you lose Bengals. No one's batting an eye at that, even with the Bills. So that's 3. Maybe you lose Ravens. That's a road game too. So now that's 4. You drop 1 game in division just because that's 5.
Yeah.
Now you're there. I mean, you're basically like, okay, one other game, something
you're
stupid happens. Yeah, right. So, is it possible? Yeah. But I'm probably going to be finding in my favorite betting site and putting some money on the over really soon.
There you go. Good luck to you on that. And you're buying the cold ones if you have. I hate that. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate your time as always. Good chatting with you, and we'll be seeing you. We'll be seeing you soon, buddy.
Sounds good, man. Let's play some games.
That's absolutely right.